The alien ship tore through the sky like a wounded beast, fire and smoke trailing behind it. The world below was already broken, a dead place with ruined cities and crackland. The ship screamed as it fell, and when it hit the ground, the earth shook. A storm of dust and fire rose, and silence followed. From the broken wreck, survivors crawled out. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes glowing faint like dying stars. They were soldiers, once proud and strong, but now fear clung to them. They carried the wounded, dragged supplies, and whispered in their strange tongue. Among them was a girl, no older than 15 in human years. Her face was sharp, but gentle, her eyes wide with fear. Her legs did not move. She had been hurt in the crash. Her body broken from the waist down. She could not stand, could not walk. The others looked at her, and something cold moved in their eyes. She cried for help, but they only shook their heads. They whispered words she could not fully hear, but she knew their meaning. Burden, one hissed. Dead weight, another spat. She cannot fight, she cannot work, said a third. The girl reached for them, but they pulled away. Their hands dropped her, and she fell hard on the dirt. She screamed, not from pain, but from fear. She begged them not to leave, but their leader, a tall alien with silver armor cracked and burned, gave the order. Leave her, he said, voice cold like stone. She cannot help us. She will only slow us down. We have no time. And just like that, they turned their backs. The sound of their steps grew smaller. Their shadows faded. Soon, there was only silence, and the girl lying helpless in the dirt. She tried to move, dragging herself with her arms, but the weight of her body pulled her down. Her hands bled as she crawled a few inches. She cried out again and again, but no one came. Only the wind answered, carrying dust across her face. The sky grew darker, the sun sank low, the broken land stretched endless. She thought of her family, far away. She thought of her people, proud and strong, and she thought of the word they used on her useless. She bit her lip until blood touched her tongue. Her heart screamed louder than her voice. Why had they left her? Why was weakness such a crime? Hours passed. Shadows grew long. Hunger twisted her stomach. Thirst burned her throat. She felt the night crawling closer. In the dark, she knew beasts would come. Death would come. Her eyes filled with tears, and she waited. But she was not alone. In the ruins nearby, hidden behind broken walls, a human watched. His clothes were torn, his face rough with scars. His eyes were sharp, hard like steel, but inside them burned something else, fire. He had seen it all, the crash, the soldiers, the girl abandoned. He had heard her cries. He had seen her crawling, bloody hands pressing into the dirt. And now he stood silent, watching. He remembered his own past. His people had fought wars. His people had seen death. And yet, even in their darkest hours, they never abandoned the helpless to him. What the aliens had done was worse than cruelty. It was betrayal. He gritted his teeth, part of him screaming to walk away. She was alien. She was enemy. Helping her could bring danger. Her people could return. And if they found him with her, they would kill him. Humans were hated. Humans were feared. To touch her was to risk his life. And yet, as he watched, he felt something rise inside. A memory of his mother's words when he was young. We never leave the weak behind. That is what makes us human. Those words echoed in his heart like a drum. The girl sobbed, her thin hands clawing at the dirt. She whispered in her alien tongue, voice breaking. Her body shook with cold. Her face pressed to the ground. And though he did not understand her words, he understood her pain. Abandoned, betrayed, left to die. The human's hand curled into a fist. His breath heavy. He could walk away. He could survive alone. But something inside told him that if he left her, he would no longer be human. He would be just like them. Slowly, he stepped out of the shadows, his boots crunching on the broken earth. The girl froze, her glowing eyes lifted, and fear struck her heart. A human, the monster her people had told her about. His shape dark against the dying light, his eyes burning. She pushed back, dragging herself away with trembling arms. Her voice cracked into a scream. But he did not raise a weapon. He did not shout. He only looked at her for a long moment. They stared, silence between them heavy like stone. The wind howled, carrying dust. The ruined ship smoked in the distance. The world seemed to hold its breath. The girl's chest rose and fell fast. The human's hand twitched at his side, his mind a battlefield of fear and duty. Then he took another step forward. His shadow fell across her broken body. The girl gasped, trembling like a cornered animal. Her eyes begged, "Do not hurt me." And in that moment, the human spoke, his voice low, rough, but filled with something the girl had never heard before. "Do not be afraid," he said. The girl stared at the human, her breath sharp, her body shaking. Her people had told her stories. They said humans were beasts, wild and cruel. They said humans killed without mercy. But the man who stood before her did not lift a weapon. He did not strike. He only looked at her. His eyes were strange, dark, but alive. She saw no hate, only fire. The girl pushed back weakly, her arms trembling. Her voice broke into a whisper of fear. She begged him in her language, words he did not understand. But her meaning was clear. "Please, do not kill me." The human took a step closer. His boots scraped against stone. His chest rose and fell with heavy breath. His mind burned with conflict. She is alien, he thought. She is enemy. If I help her, I bring danger to myself. Her people would never do the same for me. They already proved it when they abandoned her. They have no mercy. But his heart argued louder. He remembered faces of men and women from his past. Soldiers who carried the wounded even when it slowed them. People who shared food with enemies after battles. He remembered words spoken long ago. "We do not leave the weak. That is what makes us human." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her forehead into the dirt, waiting for the strike. But the strike never came. Instead, the man crouched down slowly. His hand reached into his pack. He pulled out a small flask of water. He set it on the ground before her. Her eyes widened. She looked at the flask, then at him. Her heart raced. Was this a trick? Humans were monsters. Her people always said so. Yet here, this one gave her water. She reached out with trembling fingers, pulled the flask close, and drank. The water spilled down her chin. But it felt like life returning to her veins. The human watched in silence, his own throat dry. But he let her drink. He knew she was weak. He knew she would die without help. Still, his mind battled with fear. If I take her with me, I will be hunted. I will be seen as traitor by both sides. She cannot walk. She will slow me down. And yet, if I leave her here, I will never forgive myself. The girl lowered the flask, her lips trembling. She whispered softly, almost too quiet to hear, the words foreign, but the tone clear. "Thank you." The man's jaw tightened, his heart struck like a hammer in his chest. She was not just some alien, not just a burden. She was a child abandoned to die. And though his brain screamed danger, his soul whispered another truth. If humanity meant anything, it was this moment. He stood tall, his shadow stretching long over her. The girl shivered, still unsure of his intent. The human's hand reached out for a breath. She thought he would end her life. But instead, he touched her shoulder gently, his voice low, harsh but steady. "You will not die here," he said. Though she did not understand his words, she felt the tone, and her tears fell heavier. The human moved quickly. He looked around the broken ruins. The night was close. The beasts of this world would soon hunt. He could not leave her out in the open. He gathered scraps of metal, pieces of broken wood, and torn cloth. With rough hands, he built a small sled. He tied it together with wires from the wreck. It was not strong, but it would hold her weight. The girl watched, confused. Her eyes blinked fast. Why was he doing this? Her own people had called her useless, but this human was building for her, an enemy. When the sled was done, The man lifted her carefully. She gasped, afraid. But he did not drop her. His arms were strong, his steps steady. He laid her onto the sled and pulled it behind him. Slowly, he carried her away from the open field into the cover of broken walls. The night fell heavy. The stars burned cold in the sky. Strange cries of beasts echoed in the distance. The girl lay on the sled, her hands gripping the edges, her eyes fixed on the human's back. Each step he took was loud against the silence. Each step was defiance against fear. She thought of her people, their cold eyes, their cruel words. They had left her to die. But this human, this supposed monster, had lifted her, carried her, and saved her. Her heart twisted in confusion. The stories she had been told began to break. The human stopped at a small ruin. He pulled the sled inside. The walls have broken, but enough to give shelter. He set down his pack. He gave her a small piece of dried food. She ate slowly. Staring at him with wide eyes, he sat nearby, silent, his eyes watching the entrance, his body tense. He did not trust this world. He did not trust her people. But he trusted his own choice. He had done what he must. The girl's voice broke the silence. She spoke in her tongue, words soft and trembling. The human did not understand. But the tone was clear. She asked, "Why?" He looked at her, his face hard, his jaw clenched. For a moment, he said nothing. But in his heart, he knew the answer. Because leaving her was not human. Because mercy was stronger than fear. Because even in a broken world, kindness still mattered. He leaned back against the wall, his eyes narrowing, his voice low, a whisper to himself, "We do not abandon." The girl did not understand the words, but she felt them. She felt the truth in his presence, and for the first time since the crush, she closed her eyes not in fear, but in hope. The night stretched long, shadows crawling over broken stone. The girl lay on the sled, her body weak, her mind spinning. In the silence, she kept her eyes on the human. He sat close to the entrance of the ruin, his figure dark against the faint light of stars. His weapon rested nearby, but his hands were calm. He was watchful, like a beast guarding its den. She had been told all her life that humans were monsters. Her people painted them as savages, liars, and killers. But this one had given her food, water, and shelter. Still, her heart trembled with fear. What if it was a trick? What if he only waited for her to sleep? Her eyes closed and opened, drifting between pain and exhaustion. Every sound outside made her flinch. The cries of beasts, the whisper of the wind, the echo of distant thunder. But every time her fear rose, her eyes returned to him, and strangely, that fear eased. The human noticed. He turned his head. His sharp eyes caught hers. She gasped and looked away quickly. Heat rose in her chest. She felt ashamed of her fear, but she could not stop it. He studied her for a long time, then reached into his pack again. Slowly, he pulled out a small cloth and a piece of bread. He tore the bread into smaller parts. He placed one piece near her, then leaned back. His body languid clear. He would not force her. He would not come closer unless she wanted. The girl stared at the bread. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her hand shook. Was it poisoned? Was it a trap? She remembered the water earlier. He had not harmed her then. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing the rough surface. She pulled it close and bit. The taste was dry, but to her it felt like life itself. The human watched, his expression unreadable. But when he saw her eat, his eyes softened slightly. He nodded once, as if confirming his choice. She was not enemy now. She was his responsibility. Hours passed. The cold night wrapped around them. The human pulled a torn blanket from his pack and set it over her. She froze again. Her breath caught. No one had touched her since the crush, not even her own people. The weight of the cloth felt strange, heavy with kindness. She looked up at him. Her voice trembled as she spoke words in her tongue. The human did not understand, but he caught her tone, soft and unsure. It was a question. He shook his head slightly, then tapped his chest with a Finger, human, he said. The girl blinked, repeating the sound weakly. Who? Man. Her accent broke the word. But the meaning was clear. A small smile touched his lips. He tapped his chest again. Human, he said firmly. Then he pointed at her, tilting his head. She hesitated, then pressed her hand weakly to her own chest. Lyra, she whispered, her name carried in a fragile voice. The human nodded once, repeating slowly, Lyra. The sound of her name on his lips shocked her. Her people had never spoken it with such weight. He made it sound important, real. From that moment, something shifted. She still feared him. But now curiosity grew. He did not roar like a monster. He did not hurt her. He learned her name and gave her his. For the first time since her people left, she felt seen. Through the night, they shared small words. He pointed at things: a stone, a star. His knife, and named them. She repeated in broken sounds. Her own language slipped out too, and he tried, clumsy but patient. They laughed once when he mispronounced. The sound was small, but in the ruin of a dead world, it felt bright. The human's heart softened as he watched her. He had carried guilt for years, guilt from battles, guilt from choices. But this girl was innocent, abandoned by those who should have protected her. He felt anger at her people. But more than that, he felt resolve. He would not let her die. As dawn touched the horizon, the air cold and sharp, Lyra stirred. She tried again to move her legs, but they remained lifeless. Her face fell, tears forming. The human saw and crouched beside her. He took 2 broken rods, some cloth, and rope from his pack. With rough hands, he began to build something. Lyra watched, confusion mixing with hope. He tied the rods together, added wheels from the wreck, his movements quick and skilled. Soon, he had built a crude chair with wheels. He placed it in front of her. She blinked, not understanding. Then he lifted her gently, setting her onto the chair. She gasped, her hands gripping the edges. For the first time since the crush, she was not crawling in the dirt. She sat upright, lifted by his effort. Her heart pounded. She looked at him, eyes wide. Her lips trembled. She whispered in her tongue again, a word he did not know, but he understood. Gratitude. The human stood tall, his hand resting on the chair. His face hard, but his voice soft. You will not crawl again, he said. She did not understand the words, but she felt them. She felt his promise. The sun rose higher, painting the ruins in gold. And there, in the broken world, 2 enemies sat together, one paralyzed, one scarred. But in that moment, they were not enemies. They were simply human and Lyra. And a fragile thread of trust had been born. Asterisk. The sun rose slowly over the broken horizon. Its pale light touched the ruins, painting everything in gold and ash. The human stood near the doorway of the shelter, his eyes sharp, scanning the land beside him. Lyra sat in the chair he had built, her small hands gripping the wooden edges. She still could not believe it. Just last night she had been crawling in the dirt, abandoned. Today she sat upright, lifted by the hands of a human. She looked at him when he was not watching, her heart filled with confusion. This was not what she had been taught. Humans were supposed to be cruel. Humans were supposed to be monsters. Yet this one worked to keep her alive. The man crouched near a broken crate, pulling out metal scraps and wires. His hands moved with rough skill. He hammered a piece of metal against a stone. Sparks flying. Lyra flinched at the sound. Her people used machines, clean and perfect. But this human built with whatever he could find, turning broken things into tools. He noticed her watching. He paused and lifted the metal knife, he said, pointing at the sharp edge. She tilted her head, not understanding. He repeated slowly, knife, his voice firm, teaching. Lyra touched her lips and whispered back, K, knife. The sound was strange on her tongue. Her accent broke it apart. But the man gave a small nod, approval in his eyes. For the first time, she felt pride. Through the morning, he taught her more words. He pointed at the sky. Sky, she repeated. Ski, He pointed at himself. Human, she said it softly. Who? Man, he pointed at her. Lyra. She smiled weakly, saying her own name. He repeated it with the same weight as before. Lyra. Bit by bit, the wall between them began to crack. They shared no common tongue, but they found a rhythm. He used gestures, she used expressions, and where words failed, silence spoke. When she grew tired, he placed a water flask in her hands. She drank, watching him quietly. Her mind spun with questions. Why was he doing this? Why would he help her? Her own people had called her weak, useless. They had turned their backs. But this human, this enemy, treated her like she mattered. As the day passed, he worked more on her chair. He added stronger wheels, tied the frame tighter with rope. Lyra tested it, rolling slowly on the cracked floor. She laughed once, a soft, broken sound. The human turned, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. He had not heard laughter in years. The sound shook something inside him, a piece of his heart long asleep. He came to her side, showing her how to use her arms to turn the wheels. She tried, her hands weak. The chair moved clumsy at first, but she pushed harder. Soon, she rolled a short distance. Her face lit up, her eyes shone. For the first time since her injury, she felt control. She felt free. The human watched with silent pride. He did not smile often, but in that moment, his lips curved slightly. Lyra caught it and froze. Her heart raced. She had never seen a human smile, and it was not cruel. It was warm. Later, when hunger returned, he opened his pack. Inside were small pieces of dried food, barely enough for one. He broke it in half, handing the larger piece to her. She shook her head, pushing it back. He pushed it forward again. Firm, she hesitated, then took it. Her eyes softened. She whispered a word from her language. Gratitude. The human did not understand, but he nodded as they ate. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt safe. That night, the wind howled outside, carrying the cries of beasts. Lyra trembled, pulling the blanket tighter. She looked at the man, sitting near the doorway with his weapon. His eyes stayed sharp, never resting. He was guarding her, she realized. He could have left her many times, but he stayed. Her chest tightened. She whispered again, this time louder. Why? The human turned his head. His eyes met hers. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, he tapped his chest. Human. Then he pointed at her. Lyra. His voice steady, his meaning clear. She did not fully understand, but she felt it. He was telling her that her life mattered, not because she was strong, not because she was useful, but because she was Lyra. She lay back, tears sliding down her cheeks. But they were not tears of fear this time. They were something new. She felt hope. The human looked at her once more, his face still hard, but his eyes softer. He whispered to himself, words she did not know. We do not abandon. The fire burned low. The ruins grew quiet. And in that broken place, two enemies began to become something more. Not friends, not yet, but something stronger than fear. Something that would grow. The days passed slowly. The human and Lyra built a fragile rhythm of survival. He gathered scraps, hunted small animals, and kept watch through the nights. She learned new words, pushed her chair across broken ground, and laughed softly when he failed to copy her alien sounds. Their world was harsh, but together they made it bearable. But peace never lasted long in a land of war. One morning, as the pale sun rose, the human froze. His sharp ears caught a sound. Boots crunching on stone. Voices carried by the wind, harsh, familiar to Lyra. Her people. Her blood ran cold. Her heart pounded against her chest. She gripped the sides of her chair, trembling. The voices grew louder. Armored soldiers moving closer, searching the ruins. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. She whispered quickly in her language, "They are here, they are here," though he could not understand. The human understood enough. He grabbed his weapon, crouched low, and motioned her to stay silent. His eyes sharp, his body tense like a coiled spring. He had known this moment would come. He had taken a risk when he saved her. Now the cost stood at the door. The patrol moved through the ruins, their glowing eyes sweeping every shadow. They carried weapons of fire, ready to kill. One soldier's voice cut the silence. "Find the girl. She must be here." Lyra's breath caught. She pressed her hands over her mouth. Her people, the same ones who had abandoned her, now searched. Why? To save her. No, their tone was cold. They were hunting, not helping. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. His eyes met hers. He shook his head slowly, warning her, "Do not move. Do not speak." Tears welled in her eyes. Her heart twisted with conflict. These were her people, her blood, her race. But they had left her in the dirt. They had called her useless. And here, beside her, was the human who had carried her, fed her, given her hope. The patrol drew closer. The crunch of boots echoed like thunder. Lyra's chest burned with fear. If they found her with him, they would kill them both. She thought of calling out. She thought of begging them to take her back. But deep inside, she knew if she went with them, she would only be abandoned again. Or worse, the human's eyes never left the patrol. He held his weapon tight, ready to fight if needed. His mind burned with calculations. Could he win? No, too many. But he would fight anyway, not for victory, but to protect her. Lyra felt the truth in his presence. He was willing to die for her, a stranger, an enemy. Her people had left her, but he would stay. That realization hit her harder than any wound. The patrol stopped near the broken walls. One soldier raised his weapon, scanning. Another called out, "If you are here, show yourself. We will not be merciful later." Their voices cold, empty of care. Lyra's lips trembled. Her heart screamed to speak, to call for safety. But then she turned her head. Her eyes fell on the human, his face hard, his jaw clenched, his breath steady though danger stood so near. And she understood. This was her choice. She could betray him and return to the ones who had left her, or she could stay silent, trust him, and face the storm together. Her hands shook. Her throat burned. She closed her eyes, whispering only to herself, "I will not leave him." The soldier searched, but the ruined shadows were deep. The human held his breath, his body still as stone. The air grew heavy. Every second stretched like eternity. Finally, after long minutes, the voices drifted away. The sound of boots faded. The patrol moved on, leaving only dust and silence. Lyra exhaled sharply, tears falling down her cheeks. She had chosen. She had stayed. The human lowered his weapon slowly, his muscles relaxing. He turned to her, studying her face. He did not speak, but in his eyes was something new, trust. He knew now she would not betray him. Lyra wiped her tears. Her voice broke as she spoke his word. "Who? Man." She pointed at him with trembling fingers. Then she pressed her hand to her own chest. "Lyra." The human gave a single nod, his lips moving with quiet strength. "Human and Lyra," he said, though she understood only the sound. From that moment, the bond was sealed, not by words, not by blood, but by choice. She had chosen him over her own kind. He had chosen her over his fear. The night returned, and with it silence. But it was not the same silence as before. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of two lives bound together. And far away, the patrol marched on, unaware that they had left behind something stronger than their orders, something dangerous, something human. Asterisk, the patrol was gone, but the weight of danger still hung heavy in the air. Lyra's hands shook as she gripped the arms of her chair. Her heart had chosen. She had stayed silent. She had chosen the human over her own people. But fear still gnawed at her. What if they returned? What if she had doomed them both? The human moved with steady steps, checking the shadows, his weapon ready, his jaw tight. He did not speak, but Lyra saw the storm in his eyes. He had been ready to fight, ready to die. And though the patrol had passed, the danger was not gone. When he returned to her side, she whispered weakly, her voice cracking, "Why risk? He did not understand the words, but he understood the question in her eyes. He crouched low, pointing at her chest, then at his own. He said slowly, "Together." Lyra's breath caught. Her throat tightened. The one word carried more meaning than any speech. Together. She had never been part of together. Not since the crash. Not since her people left her. As night came, the wind carried strange cries. Beasts moved in the dark. Their glowing eyes blinked from the shadows. Lyra froze, clutching her chair. The human stood before her, weapon raised. His body a shield between her and the danger. The beasts prowled. Closer, low growls vibrating through the air. One leapt forward, teeth flashing. The human's weapon cracked with fire. The beast fell. Another launched. He swung, striking hard. Lyra gasped as the fight raged. The human fought with the desperation of one who refused to fall. Each strike, each shout, was not only for his survival, but for hers. Blood smeared his arm, claws tearing cloth and skin. But he did not stop. He roared like the earth itself, until the last beast limped away into the dark. Silence returned, broken only by his ragged breathing. Lyra's eyes burned with tears. He was bleeding. He was hurt because of her. She willed closer, reaching for him. He waved her off, shaking his head, his voice rough. "Not your fault." Though she did not understand the words, she understood the tone. She tore a strip from her own cloak, pressing it to his wound. Her hands trembling, he stared at her, surprised. She looked up at him, eyes wet, lips firm. For the first time, she was not only the one being protected, she was helping him. In that broken ruin, something changed. The line between protector and protected blurred. They were not master and burden. They were survivors. Side by side, days turned into nights. The human taught her more words, stronger ones: fight, walk, brave. She repeated each with determination, though her legs lay silent. Her spirit grew strong. She began to believe she was not useless, not weak, not abandoned. When storms came, they built shelter together. When hunger pressed, she helped prepare what little food they had. She laughed again, louder this time. The human listened, silent but warmed. Each laugh reminded him why he had chosen. But danger never slept. The patrols returned, searching wider. The beasts circled at night. The land itself tried to break them, and yet, each trial only bound them tighter. One evening, as firelight flickered, Lyra spoke. Her voice soft but steady. "They left," she said in broken human tongue. "You stay." The human froze. The words struck him deep. He looked at her, his scarred face hard, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. He nodded once, pressing his hand over his chest. "Always," he whispered. Lyra lowered her head, tears falling. But this time, they were not from fear or pain. They were from something new: trust. The human leaned back, staring at the stars above. For years, he had carried his own scars. He had lost comrades, seen betrayal, felt the cold touch of war. He had thought humanity was fading. But here, with this alien girl, he felt it again. Humanity was not in power, not in strength, but in the choice to protect, to stay. Lyra watched him in silence, her heart heavy but also light. She had made her choice too. She would not betray him. She would not call to her people. She was no longer only alien. She was something more, something shared with him. The world outside was broken. Armies marched. Battles raged. But inside their ruin, two lives had chosen a different path. One scarred soldier, one broken girl, and together they stood against everything. That night, the wind howled, the ruins groaned, but in the firelight, their bond burned brighter. Not enemy, not stranger, but human and Lyra. And for the first time, both believed in tomorrow. The nights grew longer, the world stayed broken. But inside the ruins, a light was growing. Lyra no longer cried herself to sleep. She no longer whispered prayers for her people to return. Instead, she listened to the steady breath of the human beside her, his presence stronger than any wall. his silence louder than any promise. She had once been abandoned. Now she was not alone. The human rose each morning before the sun. He searched for food, built fires, patched walls, and always came back to her, his hands rough, his body scarred, but his eyes steady. He never spoke much, but every action told her more than words could. He stayed. Lyra watched him, studied him. She learned his movements, his patience, his strength. He was not perfect. He stumbled. He bled. He grew tired. But unlike her people, he never turned away. Even when she slowed him, even when she could not walk, he stayed. Her heart carried two truths. The first was pain, the memory of her people's betrayal. The second was hope, the gift of the human's kindness. And every day, the second truth grew stronger. One evening, as stars spread across the sky, Lyra sat in her chair by the fire. Her hands rested on her knees. She looked at him as he sharpened his blade. The firelight glowed on his face. His eyes burned steady. She whispered in her broken human tongue, "They left me." The human paused. His blade froze in his hand. He lifted his head, meeting her gaze. She swallowed, tears forming. "But you stay." For a long moment, silence wrapped them. The human's jaw tightened. His breath deepened. Finally, he set down the blade and leaned closer. His hand rested on her shoulder, firm but gentle, his voice low. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We never abandon." She did not understand every word, but she felt them. She felt them in her bones. Her tears fell, but they were warm, not bitter. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his scarred fingers. "Human," she whispered, her voice soft, full of meaning. The fire crackled. The night whispered. In that moment, she no longer saw him as enemy. She saw him as something her people could never be. She saw him as the one who had given her life again. Days passed, and their bond deepened. When storms came, they endured together. When hunger struck, they shared the last piece of bread. When danger returned, he fought, and she stayed by his side, even broken, even paralyzed. She was no longer weak, for she carried his strength within her. But the world was changing. Rumors reached even their ruined shelter. Armies moved again. Ships crossed the skies. And one day, as dawn rose, the human climbed the broken walls and looked far to the horizon. His eyes narrowed. His chest tightened. In the distance, lights moved, many lights, marching, growing closer. His heart pounded. They were not beasts, not raiders, not alien patrols. They were humans. Lyra wheeled closer, confusion on her face. She followed his gaze. She saw the lights too, hundreds, maybe thousands. Her breath caught. Her voice whispered, "More like you." The man nodded slowly. His jaw clenched. He did not know what they would think. He had protected an alien, carried her, fed her, trusted her. Would they understand? Or would they call her enemy, useless, just as her own people had done? Lyra's hands gripped her chair. Her heart raced. Would they take her from him? Would they kill her? The thought cut her deeper than any wound. She turned to him, fear filling her eyes. "You stay?" she asked, her broken words trembling. The human looked at her, his face hard as stone, but his eyes soft. He placed his hand over his chest, then touched her shoulder, his voice steady. Always, tears filled her eyes. She nodded. She believed him. She no longer feared, for no matter what came, he had chosen, and so had she. The lights on the horizon grew brighter. The sound of marching feet echoed through the land. The world was watching. The future was uncertain, but in the ruins, under the rising sun, something greater had already been born. A scarred human and a broken alien girl, bound not by blood, not by race, but by choice. In a universe filled with betrayal and cruelty, they had found each other, and, as the human tightened his grip on his weapon, standing tall beside Lyra, the truth rang clear. Humanity was not about strength. Humanity was not about power. Humanity was about compassion, about never leaving the weak, about staying when all others walked away. That was their strength. That was their fire. And in that moment, as dawn painted the world in light, humanity shined brighter than any star.